featuring featuring four of our grantees. Happy Monday morning. Hopefully you're with us, and like I said, you're having your second cup of coffee like myself. Next slide, Jennifer. I'm going to be very quick here because we have four projects that are going to present today, and I know you're much more excited probably to hear from them than you are me. So what we did here with the projects, they are moving right along. We are in the implementation phase. We were able to really categorize them into five buckets, if you will. A lot of them do, go in multiple buckets, but it was easy. It was a way for us to, when we categorize them, for me at least, and I think for stakeholders to understand really what the projects are about. So we have supporting those that support, supporting through technology, community partnership and community change, information skills for individuals, and exploring current models of services and payment. So each of the projects touches on one of these boxes or more. And so we're excited to share for today. Next slide. I also wanted to highlight the website. I will also put this in the chat as well so that you don't have to type this out. But if you also search, you should be able to find it. But this is a link within the main FSSA spending plan page. Each of the grantees have their one pager is uploaded onto this site as well. It's again one page. It gives information about their project. Does not do justice, obviously, one page. They're much bigger than that, but it really is a summary of everything they're doing and what parts of the state they're impacting, what individuals, if there are specific services that they're impacting. So take a look at those. We're really excited that we were able to get this site up and going pretty fast. Next slide. I'm going to go ahead. These are the four that you will be hearing from today. Again, they're not all providers that were received this grant from BEAD. So we have Stonebelt, Tendercare, ARC of Greater Boone County, and GXO Logistics. So they're going to give us about 10 to 15 minutes presentation on their project, and I will put any sorts of links or emails. I will also put in the chat for you. These slides, this is being recorded. These slides will be available too. So if you're not able to get all the information down, just know that this will be recorded and will be provided at a later date. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Stonebelt. I believe Sarah is going to start us off here.
And I think that I have granted her slide control. So Sarah, you should be able to move your own slides.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's see. All right. This is, I'm Sarah McKenney, the spiritual support coordinator or chaplain for Stonebelt ARC. Before I kind of explain what all we're doing, I figured maybe I'd spend just a short amount of time even defining spirituality for the purpose of what I'm about to share. As I know, spirituality, that word can carry a lot of different meanings for a lot of different people. So these are kind of the definitions or the examples that we're going to kind of work off of in this pilot program. So really, I kind of categorized it into two separate categories. The first category is the big questions category. So this is the way in which people explore these kind of big unanswerable questions that we kind of ask throughout our lifetime. Who am I? Not just, of course, our name, but who am I? What do I like? What do I not like? What's important to me? How did I get here? So yes, I know through our parents, but how does that all happen? How is there something bigger than that going on? Why do bad things happen? So again, looking at the whys. Why do things happen? Why do bad things happen? Is there a God? If so, what are they like? If not, what is going on? Kind of those universe outside of ourselves types of questions. What comes after death, if anything? what is my purpose as an individual, but what is our purpose as maybe a collective, as humans? What even is good and bad, and who or what decide that? So really those are talking about like morals and values. So these are things that people may not intellectually rationalize out themselves, but they're exploring in the way that they interact with the world. The second category is the spiritual needs category. So this is what I would say is kind of the fundamental needs that every single person, no matter what their intellectual ability or not is, what drives what they do in the world. And ultimately that's everybody seeks to feel valued, have a sense of value in their life and be valued. Everyone seeks out love to some extent. Everybody wants to be loved and seeks out love in their life. Everybody wants to be needed and feel needed. Again, it might not be this intellectual understanding of these things, but it's that feeling, it's that connectedness with other people, connections, belonging, that feeling of real belonging and being included with others, friendships, joy, just we seem to just be connected to what brings us joy in life. And a feeling of that we have a purpose in life, as these are the core things that kind of guide what we do and the reasons why we do and move in this space in life. So now I'm going to move a little bit more like what are we even going to do with all this? So the spiritual support, there will be currently I do a lot of this, but the goal of this program would be that this is a potential Medicaid waiver service that gets added so that more people have the options to explore this. So the spiritual support coordinator would work with community hubs and faith communities to do trainings and support. So community hubs so you have your faith communities, but then you have your community hubs, which are those other spaces that aren't a specific religion, but those other spaces where people gather together to still feel community, connection, belonging. So that could be the comic book store that they hang out and they've created that kind of community of friends. Could be a book club, could be a hiking group that they regularly go with. So any of those kind of community hub type of spaces. So the faith communities and community hubs are sometimes not welcoming spaces of belonging for people with IDD. And there are many faith communities that are fundamentally ableist. So they're unwelcoming, exclusive, etc., of people with disabilities in their function. So the spiritual support coordinator would help provide education and training and resources to help grow and enhance these spaces of inclusion and belonging throughout the community. Specifically with regards to faith communities, there would be and we're already doing this at Stonebelt, Building Belonging Congregation Partnership Program on Inclusion. So this is a program where congregations of all different faith traditions gather together, and initially it's a 2-year commitment with a hope that they continue. But they work on how they can be more inclusive and accessible. So they do a deep dive of doing accessible assessments of their faith communities. And then they kind of do a lot of training and research on how they can make those improvements. And it's an ongoing work if they're not complete after those 2 years. So another thing is specifically on the topic of end-of-life support and training. So this is a whole other way that we are hoping to develop and expand. Adults with IDD are reaching old age more and more, and direct support professionals are not trained to prepare or prepared for end-of-life care. And this is causing a lot of trauma within DSPs, and then also trauma for people with IDD. So people with IDD have the same end-of-life choices and decisions to make in their end-of-life care and what that looks like, but are often not given opportunities to explore and make these decisions. So the spiritual support coordinator would help prepare and support and train the DSPs so that they are better equipped and prepared to do that end-of-life care and be there for people with IDD in that end-of-life stage. The spiritual support coordinator would also help with communications between the service provider staff and the hospice staff. So if a person decides to die in their own home and maybe have the added care of hospice, the spiritual support coordinator would help the communications and the connections between these service providers. So for us, the Stonebelt staff and the hospice staff, just for better collaboration, working together, sharing of resources so that everybody's kind of working together as a unit and understanding what's going on. Supporting family members in their grief, the spiritual support coordinator would be available for that. And then helping to manage those difficult conversations just that come up with family, or not everybody's going to necessarily agree on end-of-life choices. So sometimes the spiritual support coordinator would be available also just to manage and help sit in those difficult conversations. So another aspect of the spiritual support coordinator would be grief counseling. So grief is a highly unmet need. Grief doesn't always refer to loss related to a death. So it can also be a direct support professional who no longer works with somebody. It could be changes to roommates, could be maybe family doesn't come and visit as often as they used to. Maybe grief over their own disability, meaning the marginalization that they experience in life and not feeling like they belong in the community, and grief over that disconnect. It might also be, so another aspect of this is that a lot of social workers and therapists are actually not trained in grief support because it's not a part of the core curriculum in their schools. So the spiritual support coordinator would provide grief counseling for people with intellectual developmental disabilities, but they're also going to help train the local grief support professionals. So clergy, hospice, hospital chaplains, therapists, social workers, so that the community resources are also available and become available to do grief counseling as well. Something that's going to be really new for Stonebelt this is the part of the program that we're spending the most time piloting, because the other stuff I've already been doing with Stonebelt for the last 5 years. But the spiritual engagement coaches is as kind of our newest thing that we're developing. So a spiritual engagement coach would actually work directly with people with IDD one-on-one. So they're going to support the person in discovering what their spiritual needs are, exploring what options then exist in the community to meet those needs. So that might be a faith community, but it also might be a social club, anywhere that they can find that connection, that belonging. Then actually connecting with others in that chosen intentional community. Growing meaningful relationships. So they're not just with paid staff who are paid to be with them, but they're actually building those mutual friendships. Helping to solve long-term solutions regarding transportation so that they can continually go there and participate. And then the spiritual engagement coach would fade out. So this is going to be very similar to a job or employment coach. You see this a similar format here. The hope is that then there is a decrease in the need of paid staff and an increase of the use of natural supports, which is also increasing the quality of relationships and friendships to improve the person's spiritual health ultimately. So in the end, we are actually going to create a spiritual support program manual. So this will include everything that we've talked about and more. So that'll include spiritual need assessments for annual and quarterlies for case managers. So you all are better equipped to even explore this part of the ISP. As I know, sometimes it's hard to know what questions to even ask. We'll also have the creation of spiritual engagement coach assessments, and all of their program material and resources will be in the manual. Grief support material, end of life decision making and support resources. So I'll put all of that in there. Program job descriptions. So I'll help you even with knowing what to put on your job descriptions and what qualifications need to go in there. And then other tools and resources to support the program. And we'll also, we're going to be passing on stats and surveys just as we explore and these new elements of this program. And then our final recommendation will be to make this an additional Medicaid waiver service in some way.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. You were right on time. Perfect.
I
And
was
there is
trying.
yeah, exactly. I was getting ready to, but you were wrapping up. So here is Sarah's information. I also put that in the chat, or I will put that information. Some of it I already did in the chat as well. Okay, moving right along. Next slide, please. Great. Okay, we have Tendercare. Eric Deachman, if you want to go ahead and come off mute and share some information about your project.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for hosting this webinar, and Sarah, great job. I'm Eric Deichman. I'm one of the co-owners here at Tendercare and Director of Business Development. And just to give kind of an intro to Tendercare and what we do. So Tendercare has been a Indianapolis company for the last 30 years. My parents started the company out of a small farmhouse in Mooresville, Indiana, and have kind of just worked hard, grown gradually. We are, started with one patient and currently have about 220 patients. We take care of a lot of the kids that come out of Riley and St. Vincent's Children's Hospital that have kind of chronic conditions, or, take care of a lot of premature babies. Either, a lot of kids that come home with ventilators, trachs, G-tubes, a lot of respiratory illnesses or diseases. And then we also take care of a lot of adults, but many of the adults that we take care of are kids that we had that have, been able to thrive with the care that we've had or been able to provide over the years. And, they started out as, babies, and now that, they're past the age of 18, so are still living in the community. One of my good friends is one of our patients and still going to Pacer games and living a full life. So a lot of what we do, we'll send in a nurse kind of Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, so the family or the parents can continue to work, provide for the other children, and we help get the patients set up with therapy services, skilled nursing. We also do, OT, PT, attendant care through the waiver, have RNs, LPNs, and home health aides as well. And so the basis of this or our IPP project was wanting to really standardize the kind of respiratory assessment programs that are out there. So essentially, when you are taking care of a ventilator patient or a patient that has a trach, have a standard of care or a standard training plan that can be replicated for other providers, because there isn't one currently, and we feel that that's a big need. And so we wanted to kind of be able to give not only our employees the confidence in our program, but also give the patients the confidence that there is a kind of a standardized gold standard plan for respiratory care. We already have a ventilator class, but we wanted to kind of expand on that class. by kind of setting the standard for either 16 to 20, 24 hours of orientation with ventilator patients. We have currently, 220 in, from kind of West Lafayette down to Bloomington. And so wanted to kind of expand, and then also to provide an opportunity for our nurses in the field to kind of skill up and become more mentors and trainers of those nurses. And one of the big things is, I always talk about if, we do a lot to try to find a babysitter for our own kids, and none of them have a trach or a G-tube or any special need, and the standard that we have for the people that come into our house is astronomical. And, we want to be able to provide all these families with the highest level of trained professionals as possible. We push for that now, and we want to continue to push for higher standards and want that to be the standard across the state, and wanting to help develop this program so that when a new mom with a new baby who's got a trach is leaving for work, she's confident that, the person's had background checks, that the person has been thoroughly trained, and that that training program kind of has had a cross reference or another person who's signed off on it. And that's kind of why we're going through this program. And we also want to make sure that, we are able to attract kind of newer nurses to home care and this high-tech care, because it is nerve-wracking for a lot of nurses, especially if you are a new nurse. There's no, respiratory therapist on the floor. There's no senior nurse to kind of fall back on. If there is an issue with the vent, or if there's a clog in a trach, you have to act fast. You have to be well trained, and you've got to be able to change out that trach, do an emergency trach change as quickly as possible. And we want to be able to, have this program so that we can help, ease and, help new nurses be more confident as they come into the home care space, because it can be a bit nerve-wracking for many of them. And we're hoping with the increased training, we are going to try to put kind of this standardized training together, get it video documented. So after the people have come in, they now have it via video to reference that we've trained, and we can edit over time, be able to have those mentor nurses and, be able to train them a lot more. And we're hoping that this will help decrease our turnover rates, so that ultimately we can provide more care, because as everybody knows, there's a huge Medicaid waiting list, which I'm happy that we're working with, FSSA to address, and happy that there's new budget increases for, home and community-based services. But we want to make sure that we're not doing anything to, I guess, weed out nurses too quickly. We want to, have this so we can try to reduce turnover rates as much as possible, and continue to provide opportunities so that we can serve more patients. And because that's ultimately what it's all about, providing better services to more people throughout Indiana. So that's really kind of probably a little quick on our time, but that's what we're aiming for. So if anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them. I think you're going to do them at the end, but feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to help as much as possible.
Thank you, Eric. I have, I put your email address in the chat.
Okay, perfect.
As well. And then, yes, we're going to hold the questions until the end. I don't see any right now, but sometimes they're coming in toward the end. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we're going to turn to Pam Verbar from the ARC of Greater Boone County.
And Pam, I've given you control of your slides.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much, Jennifer. And thanks everybody for joining us this morning. Our project that I'm excited to share about is related to small business employment. We're calling it the Main Street Employment Pilot. And our goal in this project is to focus on increasing employment of people with disabilities in small businesses by reducing barriers to their employment. As a spouse of a small business owner, and knowing lots of folks who own small businesses in our communities, We know there are lots of barriers to small businesses being able to hire people with disabilities. And one of the biggest things we hear frequently in talking to those employers is that because a small business, especially a mom and pop with only 2 or 3 people, they will comment that we have a very small staff, and when we hire people, we've got to have people who can do pretty much everything within our business. So there are many times those small business owners have fears about their ability to hire a person with a disability because they're afraid they may not be able to have that person they hire be able to work in all of the pieces and parts of their businesses. There are other concerns we've heard are the expense of longer training periods, that they might need to hire 2 people. And they may have some misconceptions about hiring people with disabilities as well. So a lot of what we're wanting to try to do is address those particular barriers that may come up and cover some things that are not necessarily covered by vocational rehabilitation as we do that. So what we are looking to do, and we've already started, is we have several activities that are part of this pilot. The first is doing some surveys of many of our small businesses in our communities. And what we are wanting to look at as we gather that information is their attitudes about hiring people with disabilities. So we know if there's specific training that we need to be doing, because that's one of the pieces that we can provide as part of this project. We also want to look at barriers. Does an employer have a need for very specific niche type skills, or do they have issues with the equipment that they have in their business that needs to be overcome? And then also looking at their interest in hiring people with disabilities. The survey we are using is going to be adapted from a survey that's used by the DOL's Office of Disability and Employment Policy. So we've got some very standardized questions that are consistent with some things that are used on a national basis. And the Zionsville Chamber is going to help us distribute that survey. We're also going to be working with our Boone Chamber and our Boone EDC to send that information out as well, so that we've got that information going out to a number of small businesses. Other activities include some enhanced discovery targeted towards small business employment. So we'll be taking extra time and talking to our VR referral clients to be finding out who is interested in small businesses and what do we need to do to do that, and utilizing the life course tools and using the employment portfolio that they have to help target that information so that we have that available. The third piece of our project is stipends. So we are going to be having internship stipends that will help offset wages for up to 90 days of that person's employment, so that the employer does not have to incur those costs. And the stipend idea is very similar to those of you who are doing pre-ETs to what we're all doing in pre-ETs today, so that those employers can basically test out that employee, not have to incur that cost of an additional employee while they're training, and help ensure the success of that person. We also have stipends available for accommodations of equipment not funded elsewhere. So if a person or a business is in need of equipment to make this job easier for the person to be able to work with them, we'll be able to provide that equipment. And we're talking things from, very simple accommodations to more complex things, where if a business needs something like a point of sale system because they're currently using cash registers, that will be able to do bar scanning and pictures on their screens to be able to select items, we'll be able to help fund that. And the third piece in the stipends that we have there is transportation equipment assistance. As we know, transportation is a challenge, and in our communities, our local transportation provider typically runs from about 8 to 4 Monday through Friday. So we want to be able to help individuals who might need to use Uber or Lyft or other alternative forms of transportation to get to work. And then, of course, the final activity is measuring the success of the program. We are, as we have developed this concept and our pilot, we really spent time looking at who could help us partner in this, because we've got our employment consultants who do a great job of developing employment opportunities, but we also know that we have community partners who already have many of those partnerships with small businesses. So we have opted in this to partner with our Zionsville Chamber of Commerce and the Rise Foundation, which is connected with the Zionsville Chamber, to formally help us with distributing the surveys and also talking to employers about the opportunities that they have. We went this direction because our Zionsville Chamber of Commerce has really spent a lot of time in promoting employment for people with disabilities. So we have some champions within that organization who have committed to not only hiring people with disabilities themselves, but promoting that around the community. So we are using them as an advocacy champion and helping us with the networking in this as well. So we're excited about this opportunity as well with working with them. And then finally, I'm just going to touch on what we are looking at as our success measures. So we want to have some measures of how well this is working. So obviously, successful employment that lasts beyond 6 months or even up to the 2-year period that we have remaining on the project will be a big key of this. We'll also want we'll be measuring our small business education and seeing other small businesses becoming champions of hiring people with disabilities. We'll also have some really key local information on attitudes of employees, on those employers and employees on hiring people with disabilities. And we want to really kind of do that survey twice. So we're doing it now, and we'll do it again near the end of the period to see what additional information employers have. We'll also be looking at the satisfaction of workers and employers, and then also developing a guidebook that can be replicated. So our idea here is, we know this is not something that the waiver can necessarily fund on an ongoing basis, but this is a project that many of us can replicate on an ongoing basis by using local and corporate grants to gain attention for that. So we really want to be able to focus on providing something that agencies can utilize within their local community foundations and other local foundations to be able to continue to support a program such as this. So that pretty much covers all of my information. Appreciate your time this morning. And again, I will be sticking around for questions at the end.
Great, thank you, Pam. Don't see any so far, so we'll keep tabs on that. Thank you so much. Okay, and we're running a little bit ahead, which is great, not a problem. So we'll have time if folks have some questions. Okay, Jennifer will go ahead and have control back.
Yeah, I've given control to GXO, so either one of you can move the slides.
Great. Okay, we have and Letitia, tell me how to say it again, because I always pronounce it wrong. I want to make sure.
No worries at all, and thank you for asking. It's Letitia.
Letitia. Okay, I want to make sure because I just went. And so we have Letitia James here, and I believe Erica. I think Erica might be on. We have GXO here. Hi, Erica. To present, we're excited to share their project with you today. So you guys go ahead. I will put an email address as well into the chat for GXO if you guys have any questions and would want to reach out to them directly. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And yes, before jumping in a little bit, I just want to say to Sarah McKinney and the Stone Belt team, really just delighted about the work that's being done there. When you talk about fostering a sense of belonging and inclusion for individuals in their personal lives, what we recognize in GXO is that who we are personally also is essentially the foundation of who we are as professionals in an organization. And those personal values are part of the intersectionality of our living. No matter who we run across in life, who we come into contact with, some of those core values of who we are as a person take shape, if not all of them. Further, GXO seeks to be a company that has core values that align with people in general. And what starts to happen when people have a personal commitment, a personal perspective of who they want to be, what they want to achieve in life, what they're looking for their families and their loved ones, they start to look for companies whose core values align with their own. I'll come back to that in a bit. Also, just want to say to Eric Dietman, the Tendercare organization, and the work that you're doing around the life trajectory of an individual. So touched by the story of the individual from birth forward into their living and their future, and individuals who are connected to you and the organization who are still thriving. Also very much resonates with us as an organization in GXO. Again, when people start to look for companies and what makes sense for their families, for their future, they're looking for their families and themselves are looking for organizations whose values align with that of their own. Again, more to come. And then obviously Pam Verbarg, always a invaluable partner to us. We've been so enriched by the journey that we've been able to have that I'll share with you here a bit about, and leveraging many arcs throughout the nation to help us achieve that goal. And Pam, we're so thrilled about the work we'll be able to get to do with you. I'm accompanied today, although I get the privilege to be able to speak to the distinguished audience here, I am accompanied today by our Chief Human Resource Officer of GXO, Mary Claire Hammond, who's on the line watching in. And also we have several diversity leaders throughout, we have several diversity leaders throughout our company. We're a global organization, and we have one for every country. So I also happen to be accompanied this morning by Kathy Earnshaw Balding, who leads diversity and inclusion in an extension of the work we're doing globally, working alongside myself and Erica. Kathy Earnshaw Balding leads our UK division of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And then, of course, as you heard mentioned, Erica Sepulveda, who is the senior project manager, who is key to driving belonging and the development of diversity and inclusion initiatives throughout GXO. Again, my name, Leticia King James, and I get the privilege to be the lead builder of belonging throughout GXO. So let me share a little bit more with you about our story. The image that you see here on screen is just a glimpse of the best practices, the cover page of the glimpse of the best practices that we are starting to compile as a result of our lessons learned and the journey that we begun a short while ago. So here what you see on screen, we have had a early set of passions that we began to realize in Clayton, Indiana, but I should also say a lot of these passions have taken place globally around the world in GXO to ensure that we can place people who have otherwise or more presumably have had barriers to employment or what could be perceived as barriers to employment, whether it's been second chancers, whether it's been individuals adjacent to or directly aligned with military, and especially those with disabilities. We wanted to be an organization that's intentional about removing those barriers, setting them aside, and making the seemingly impossible possible, ensuring that any talent can realize their full potential within GXO. So specifically related to disabilities, we started this journey a while back in Clayton, Indiana, and our Pay It Forward passion has continued into Lebanon, Indiana. Our overarching goal, as you may have guessed, is to not just allow our efforts to stop in Indiana, but to continue to be a national, international, universal approach that we can take. So as you can see here on screen, some of what we've been able to do in the initial stages in Indiana, we were able to start to lay out some best practices, showed you a glimpse of that in the previous slide of what makes sense. And here's what that is starting to look like. We've heard from leaders in different areas, hey, want to diversify my talent, but I'm concerned, does it change anything about the quotas that I'm able to meet, the expectations for me in the business? So we're being really vigilant to start to pull together, what does that best practice playbook look like? How do we debunk the myths for our leaders and get them in a place where they feel very inspired to be intentional, to include our individuals throughout the world, and in particular, beginning with Indiana, individuals who are living and leading with differing abilities. I want to just tell you a bright spot in terms of what we've been able to accomplish in Clayton, Indiana. We have a few locations there, but one in particular, we've been able to hire in the last year 30 individuals with differing abilities. And that talent, when we reached sort of in business at ebb and flow and a scenario where there could have been reductions in workforce because business has to respond to what happens within the supply chain, from our highest ranking chief officers in the organization, all the way through to the division of belonging, all the way through to the HR leadership, senior vice president leadership and presidential tiers, all the way into the local HR support in the organization. We were able to be diligent and committed to ensuring we were able to retain that talent. That makes us proud in GXO. That makes us feel like we want to continue to be an employer of choice for everyone who may feel like they have a barrier of any kind, but in particular, hoping that individuals will continue to see and hear and feel that when they start to look at their personal values, their personal perspectives for themselves and for their families, that they can find a company that aligns directly with their personal values. And our core values seek and strive to do exactly that. When you look at some of the things we've been able to address in early stages as we continue our pay it forward passions in Indiana, we've been able to identify several locations here. We've been able to start to look at deeper dives in the lessons that we have learned. In the months ahead, we're planning to identify a docu-series approach where we can pull video footage around how do we really start and making sure our leadership understands many of what they thought they've heard around placing talent with differing abilities is solely a myth. Here, based off of our work to start, is the facts to start to show that our productivity actually increases when we seek to diversify our workforces, that our goals and aims to have our own core values amplified, core values of making an impact, delivering results, being inclusive, and safety, and more, that those core values are actually more enhanced and our workplaces actually feel more inclusive when we're intentional to mitigate or remove barriers for others and ensure our workplace can be a home for everyone that comes to say, I want GXO to be my employer. So our overarching goal with the project that we've picked up is to be a business, and we're honored to be one of the businesses that are here, is to be a business that can be making available a fresh start, a game-changing fresh start for anyone seeking to come on board and realize their own full potential through not just a job, but a career in GXO. So here we have for you, just to give you a high level, a little bit of our scope of work. Some of this is impacted by things that we learn along the journey. For example, it's come to our attention that transportation can be a major factor as we've begun to place people around the world, and particularly in Indiana, that transportation can be a factor. So part of what we'll be looking at is how do we ease that? How do we eliminate that barrier and make working something everyone can look forward to? We have also learned that there are not only, as we focus throughout our organization on military placements, as mentioned, we focus on gender, obviously focus on race and ethnicity, pride, and other avenues. But what we also have tried to have a look at, and has come to our attention, that there's a need to also overlay a lens for race and ethnicity focuses and ensure that our effort to be diverse in one vein is also diversified all the more. And so we're continuing to look at those items as we have lessons learned. You can see on our journey for some of our work that is set to be accomplished is ongoing training, coaching for the sites to ensure the culture really feels inclusive, looks inclusive, understanding more about what the community is saying our individuals, our rising placements need in order to have access. Maybe it is just GXO lending its voice to raise awareness and say, hey, there's room for everyone, get involved. I'm proud to actually say, in conjunction with an ARC, just this past weekend in another state, we were able to share out, listen, this is GXO's intended commitment, but there's room for everyone. Choose a partner, align with an organization like some of these that have shared on the call today, what their focuses are, and help mobilize the movement so we can truly make this world a better place and a place of placements for careers for everyone who has a differing ability, and make this be a hallmark moment for the work we're doing here in Indiana. Additionally, as you can see, some of our future outputs include not only the training subset that we mentioned in community engagement, but to take these best practices that we're able to glean in partnership with you, BDDS, as well as the IPP offering. We are thrilled to be able to take these lessons learned, take the inputs that we've been able to realize and share, and really use them to fortify not only the Indiana market, but understand from that, what are the lessons learned, what are the best practices, and transform all of our sites. Early looks at that. Here are just a couple snippets of some of what we're including to start to jog the memories and the thoughts and the proactive planning of our leadership throughout our organization based on the work we're doing here beginning in Indiana, to say, here's some things that we need to be looking at in ensuring not just the sales goal is met, not just the safety goal is met, but let's ensure that every site is ready and prepared and able to be welcoming, inclusive, and foster a sense of belonging for every single game changer or colleague, not only those who are currently present, but those who are beginning to choose GXO as their employer of choice. That's all I have for us at this time, and looking forward to bringing future updates and sharings with you in the months ahead.
Great. Thank you so much. That was awesome information. I don't got any questions, from anyone related to any of the projects right now. We have about 67 or so folks on. So, but yeah, I don't see any questions. I'll continue to monitor it as we're talking. And here is some, in the chat, as you guys can see, I have every single organization's contact information. Again, when these slides are posted, the chat does not show up. So, just if you're thinking through and you're like, oh, I really want to contact GXO and you can't remember what the email is, please reach out. You can reach out to myself directly. Here is my email, as well as Beads Help. I think most people are familiar with that email. It's pretty easy, beads.help. So, feel free to contact that as well if you have a question, and those will get forwarded to myself. Yeah, I don't think we have anything else. I really appreciate all this information. These have been, this is our third one and have been awesome. Tons of participation, which we were really excited about because we put these together pretty fast and put the announcement out somewhat last minute. So we're excited for all the participation, and we've even had some questions that are coming in after the fact. So look forward to, again, these slides being posted, the recordings. Our next one, I believe, let me look at my calendar, I think is, yes, Wednesday the 10th. We will have 4 additional grantees presenting and throughout the month of May and June. So look for those dates. I'll probably be putting out another announcement just as a reminder to folks. They always are at 10 a.m., but sometimes they're not necessarily, always on a Monday or always on a Wednesday. And so look for that information. And if you can't find it, feel free to email us and we can make sure you have those dates. Thank you again to all the presenters, and that is it that I have for today. Hope everyone has a great week and enjoys the nice humidity that is coming our way here in Indiana. Thank you. Take care, everyone.